we're going to be talking about the segments tool as mentioned. So first of all, I'm just going to start off talking about what segments are. What are we talking about when we're talking about segments? And segments, as I've said here, are all about extracting and interrogating information from your CRM. It's about getting information out of your CRM. Segments are basically just lists of data which are defined by a set of criteria. So a bit like an advanced search, we're going to put some criteria in. It's going to give us a list in return. Segments can be any sort of data in your CRM. So a lot of people associate segments with people, but it can be any type of data in your CRM, including event data, records, all kinds of things. And segments are live lists. So in other words, we always see the latest data in a segment based on the criteria we've given. Hello to those that have just joined us. You haven't missed much. This is just an overview of what segments are all about. Okay, so let's get started with our very first segment and get familiar with the segments tool. Okay, and here we are in GoodCRM. Okay, so I'm going to head over to the segments tool. So to get to the segments tool, we go to Tools and Settings, and then to Segments. And we don't have any segments in the system at the moment, so I'm just going to go ahead and add our first segment. And I'm going to call this example segment. And then I'm going to choose what type of data I'm interested in, what information am I interested in, and I'm going to choose people for our example here. It's worth saying it is useful to have a relevant and descriptive name for our segment. I will rename this when we've got some more information in it, but that will help us because we save segments. Once you create a segment in the system, it stays there for future use, so it's useful to understand what that segment is for. So when we come into a segment, the first thing we're going to do is add criteria. We have to have at least one line of criteria for our segment to work. So I'm going to click the Add Criteria button down at the bottom here. And essentially, our criteria is made up of three parts. And the first part here is our custom fields. So what we get here is a list of all the custom fields that are available, in this case for people in the system, because this is a people segment, and we can look through them and choose, which fields we want to use for our criteria. And we're going to get different options depending on the type of field. So if I use a date field, for example, such as date of birth, I'm then get my second of the three parts of my criteria here. And this is what we call the operator, bit of a technical term there. The second part is the operator. And because we've got a date here, the options that we're given are is before a date, is before or equals a date, is equal to a date, is equals or after a date, is after, or is between. So if I chose in between, then I can put two dates in. So if I want everything this month, I could say between the 1st of September and the 30th of September. Being a date of birth field, that would be some very young babies, but you get the idea. Depending on the type of custom field we're looking at, we get different options to fill in. So we've got our custom field, we've got our operator, and then our third fields are our value. That's usually just one field because we've got in between here, we've got two. So let's make this a real example. I'm going to, I've got some people listed in my system. If I go to my people section, here are some people that I've got in my system, and you can see some of these people, hopefully you can see that some of these people are tagged as VIPs. So if I want to find all of the VIPs in the system, let me come back to my segments and my example segment here. I'm just going to rename this VIPs. Okay, and instead of date of birth, I'm going to use the person type tag field. So I can go ahead and search for the field that I'm interested in here, and my list of custom fields are going to narrow down. I'm going to choose person type. So with person type, the options I have are has any of or does not have any of, which will make more sense when we see the next option. So I'm going to choose has any of, and what that does then is it gives me a list of all my person type tags. And so I can choose any number of these tags, but I'm just interested in my VIP tag. And again, I can search for the tag that I'm interested in, or the value that I'm interested in. Okay, so this is our first segment, really simple, VIPs, searching for people where the person type has any of VIP. Obviously, if I wanted to add more options in here, I could, and then the language would make a bit more sense, has any of VIP, which, or bookworm. But I'm just going to go ahead and choose VIP. And there we have our very first segment. And if I look at my results now, I'll see that all the people on my list are tagged as a VIP. So it's as simple as that. Okay. A little bit more complex. So just to recap on our first segment there, each segment looks at one type of data. For example, people we looked at in that last example. The segment should have a descriptive name because we can go back to it and use it in the future. And each line of criteria has three parts: the custom field, the operator, and the value. So for example, person type has any of VIP. Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit more complexity now. That was a very simple segment, and one that actually wasn't any more useful than just searching for the VIP tag in the people section of the CRM. So we're going to talk about and or criteria now. If any people here are used to working with databases, this should sound familiar. And I'm just going to use some example people. So we've got some people here and they've got some badges on. We've got some people with blue badges. We've got some people with yellow badges. We've got some people with VIP badges. And we've even got one person here who's got a yellow badge and a blue badge, who was obviously a bit greedy. And we're going to use these badges to exemplify how we use and or criteria within segments. So first of all, let's find people with a blue badge. So if we're finding people with a blue badge, we're going to see all of the people in our list of people that have got blue badges, including our friend who's got a blue and a yellow badge. And our next segment is to find people with a blue badge or a yellow badge. So we're using the or operator. And essentially what we're saying there is include any people. So we think of or as corresponding to any. So find any person with a blue badge or a yellow badge. We can see we've got the blue badge, the yellow badges, and the person with the blue and the yellow badge. Now, if we change that or to an and, find people with a blue badge and a yellow badge, we're left with just the one person that has got both the blue badge and the yellow badge. So that's the difference between using or using and in our segments. Or is include everything with, and means only those that match both criteria, essentially. And we can go one step further and we can use a combination of and or in one segment. So in this case, we're saying find people with a blue badge and a yellow badge. So that's our chap here, or a VIP badge. So you can see that blue badge and yellow badge is in parenthesis here. Essentially, we're looking at that condition together. And we're saying find people that match blue badge and yellow badge, or also find people with a VIP badge. So, okay, let's take the theory here and put it into practice and look at some examples in our system. Okay, so I'm back in Tools and Settings. I'm in the Segments tool. As you can see, I've got my VIP segment here that we created a moment ago. And what I'm going to do now is just create a new segment. Again, I'm going to be looking at people, and because we've got some Harry Potter themed people in our system today, I'm going to create a segment called Witches and Bookworms. Okay, and we're going to be interested in people here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some criteria. I'm going to use that person type tag field again. So searching for people where person type has any of, and I'm going to choose which, and I'm going to choose bookworm. Oops. Which basically fit our criteria here. Now, something to be aware of here is because we're saying has any of, which, or bookworm, essentially this is an or bit of logic. We're saying the person has either which or bookworm, or potentially both. And if we have a look at our results, we can see we've got Hermione, who is tagged as a witch and a bookworm. We've got Molly, who's a witch. Bill Weasley, who is a bookworm. And Ginny Weasley, who is a witch. So we're using that or criteria, and we're finding anyone tagged as a witch or a bookworm. So effectively, this is the same as if I, let's get rid of bookworm from the top here. If I click or to add another level of criteria, I could say person type has any of bookworm. And effectively, we're saying the same thing. So find people where person type has any of which, or person type has any of bookworm. And when we look at our results there, we should see the same people. And there we do. So doing it on one line is just a shorthand way of doing what we have got here. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this additional line here. I'm just going to choose bookworm there. And I'm just going to save that segment there. So we've now got our witches and bookworms. Okay, so that's our or criteria. Let's have a look at and criteria now. So I'm going to add a new segment, and I'm going to call this one witches who are bookworms. So we're only interested now, not in all witches and all bookworms, but just witches that are also bookworms. So we're going to look at people again, and we're going to add some criteria. And we're going to use the person type field again. And this time we're going to say has any of. We're going to choose which. But this time I'm going to click on the and option to add another level of criteria. Again, I'm going to use person type. For our custom field has any of for our operator, and then for our value, I'm now going to choose bookworm. So this time we're looking for people that are a witch and a bookworm. And when we look at our results there, we can see we now only have one person that comes up, Hermione, because Hermione is tagged both as a witch and a bookworm. So that is the and operator. So we've looked at the or operator, we've looked at the and operator. And what we're going to do now is look at a combination of the two. So let's say that we want to find people who are witches who are bookworms, but also maybe this is an invite list. We want to invite witches that are bookworms, but we always invite our VIPs to our invites as well. So let's create a new segment. This time I'm going to call it invite list. We would probably want something a little bit more specific there, but just for example, again, we're going to invite people, so we're leaving people there. So this time, I'm going to start off with the people we always invite, our VIPs. So searching for people where person type has any of VIP. So if I look at my results now, I should see a list of people that are tagged as VIPs. But then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to say, or person type has any of which. Then I'm going to click and within the same group. And I'm going to choose person type has any of bookworm. So it starts to look a bit complex now. We've got and or conditions going on. So what we're saying here is find anybody that is a VIP, because we always invite those people to our events, or they are a witch and a bookworm. So we've got an and condition here, which is grouped together. Remember those parentheses, or the person type is VIP. So if I look at my results now, I will see I get the same 4 people, and that's because our only bookworm and witch is also a VIP. But what we'll see here is if we take Hermione's VIP status away from her, very mean of us. And remember, these segments are live, so as we make changes to our data, we would expect those to be reflected in the segments. We go back to our invite list. We can see that Hermione is still there because even though she's not VIP, she is both a witch and a bookworm, so she still fulfills our criteria. What we will see now, though, as well, if we go back to our VIP list, we'll see Hermione's now been removed from that list because she's no longer a VIP. Okay, wonderful. So that is the wonderful world of and or criteria. Just a little recap. So we can use the and to specify that all criteria must be matched for an item to be included in our results. So every single thing has to be included to match a result if we are using the and criteria. If we're using or, that specifies that any criteria can be matched for a particular item to be included. So as long as one of the things is true, then that person or thing will be included in our results. And we can use a combination of and or conditions in one segment. Okay, so next up. Chaining segments together. Or using one segment as criteria in another segment. If anyone is au fait with database, working with databases, then you will maybe have heard of subqueries, and basically chaining segments is the same as using subqueries. For those of you that aren't used to using databases in an advanced level, don't worry, I will explain what all of this means. So chaining segments together is basically using one segment as criteria in another segment. And there's an important thing to point out here, because one of the things we've already learned is that we can only look at one type of data in any given segment. So we can only look at people in a segment, or we can look at events in a segment. But often we want to segment our data across different data types. Maybe we want to find all the people that participated in a particular event, for example. Maybe we want to find more in-depth things than that. So this is where chaining segments comes in, and it goes hand in hand with those all-powerful connection fields that I'm always banging on about. If anyone's ever spoken to me, I've probably talked to you about connection fields. So connection fields are used within this chaining of segments. So we've got quite a few segments building up now. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show you some of the data that we've got within our system here that we're going to use for our next set of segments. So I'm going to come to my projects and events section. And in here, I've got a program called Youth Theatre Group. And within our Youth Theatre program, we've got basically a project relating to each of the past 3 years, this year and the previous 2 years. If I click into the YTG Youth Theatre Group 2022 project, we can see we've got 3 sessions, session 1, session 2, and session 3 at different points throughout 2022. And again, if I click into a session, we can see that there are 10 participants in the session. It's actually the same 10 participants in each of these sessions. The idea is this is a group that somebody will come to over a period of time. And we've got attendance data for these people as well. So we've recorded people's attendance in these groups. Okay, so one thing that we might want to do is we might want to get a list of all the people that are in a particular group within a segment so that we can maybe contact them or something like that. So in order to do that, we need to look at 2 things. We need to look at the people, but we also need to look at the events, because we're going to say, we're saying we want to find people that are participants in particular events. So to do this, we're going to chain some segments together. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a list of the events that we're interested in. So what we're trying to do ultimately is find the people that participated in a set of events. So in order to do that, we need to know what set of events we're interested in first. So I'm going to add a segment to find the events. And so I'm going to call this Youth Theatre Group 2022 events. I'm going to choose events as my data type. And I'm going to add some criteria. And basically, the thing that links all of my 2022 events together is that they're all in a project. They're all in the same project, which is the 2022 Youth Theatre Group. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at my custom fields here. You'll see they're different custom fields because they're now ones that pertain to events. And if I scroll down the list, excuse me, I see my project custom field, and I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to choose has any of. And then I'm going to choose my Youth Theatre Group 2022. So in other words, what we're doing is we're saying find all the events that are in the 2022 project. Okay, so hopefully that's nice and clear. We're just looking at a particular set of events here that are in the project Youth Theatre Group 2022. If I look at my results, I should see my 3 sessions for this year. There we go, session 1, session 2, and session 3. So we've now found our events. So the next thing we want to do now is find the people that participated in those events. Now, as we know, we can only look at one type of data per segment. So we're going to need another segment. So I'm going to create a new segment this time. I'm going to call it YTG 2022 participants. And the participants are going to be people. And this is where that chaining comes together. So I'm going to add criteria. And what you need to know about the way GoodCRM works is that participants are connected to events via a standard connection field called participants. So these connection fields, as you should know, you can create connection fields wherever you want to in your system. The system comes with one called event participants. If we look at our fields for people, below all of our standard custom fields like name and gender and age and things like that, we scroll down, we start to see these ones that have got these arrows in. So these are connection fields to do with people. And the first one we see is this event participant. So this is a connection field that connects people as participants to events. So that's what we're interested in here. So now what we could do here is I could go in any of, and this is then going to give me a list of all the events in my system that I can choose from. So I can choose manually which sessions I'm interested in. But the thing is, we've already got a segment that finds the events that we're interested in. So we can shortcut that and instead go in segment. And you'll notice there's a not in segment option here as well. So we can exclude people based on them being in a group as well as include them. I'm going to use the in segment here. So we're saying searching for people who are event participants in an existing segment called Youth Theatre Group 2022 events. So this is us chaining the segments together. This is the first segment that we created, and then we're creating the second segment that references it. Okay, so now let's have a look at our results. And we can find, here are those 10 people who are participants in those events. Now, I mentioned that this is a live list. So let's see what happens if we add somebody new to one of our groups. So one thing you can see here, I'm not going to make you remember every single person on this list. One thing you can probably see is that I don't appear on this list. So let's go and add me to one of our projects. So we'll go over to our programs, projects and events list view. And we have our 2022 sessions here. Let's go to our session 1. And I'm just going to go ahead and search for myself. Oops, wait a minute. Sorry, my video is covering up where I should actually be doing this. Let's search for myself here, where we can go ahead and add somebody. And I'm going to add myself as a participant just to this one group. So there I am. So now, because segments are live, when we go back to our participants segment, hopefully we find that I am now on that list as well. So as we add either new sessions to our project and add people to those sessions, or we just add people to the existing sessions, those people will then appear in our segment here of participants. Now, most of the people, excluding myself, most of the people on this list are young people. So if we wanted to maybe get in touch with our participants, maybe it isn't actually these people that we want to contact, maybe it's their parents. So if I have a look at Harry Potter here, for example, if I go to my all fields, I can see that the parent or guardian here is set to Petunia Dursley. Let's have a look at some of the other people on our list. So Ron here, Ron's parent or guardian is set to Arthur Weasley. So we can use this chaining again to find the people that are connected to our participants as parents. So I'm going to come to my segments tool again, and this time I'm going to create a new segment. I'm going to call it Youth Theatre Group 2022 Parents. And I suppose guardians. And those again are going to be people. I can do the same thing again. I can say add criteria. This time I want to look for our connections again. I want to look for the parent or guardian connection. And I'm going to use that in segments option again. And I'm going to this time choose our participant list. So in other words, we're finding people who are parent or guardians of the participants in our youth theatre group. When we look at the results there, we'll see here are our parents, and it so happens that lots of the people on our list are Weasleys, and so they all share a parent, and so there's many fewer parents on this list than there are participants on our list. But here we go. We have the people here. For good measure, let's say we wanted to email these people. We could add another level of criteria here, because maybe we want to make sure that they've all got an email address, right? So we can come in here and choose email. So we're saying they are a parent of a person who is participating in the youth theatre group, and their email. Again, we get different operators this time because we're looking at a text field for email. I'm going to use the contains. I'm just going to put an @ symbol in there. So as long as the person's got an @ in their email field, in other words, they've got an email address, they will be included in this segment. Now, it so happens that we only had 3 parents and they all had email addresses. However, again, these are live lists. So if we add somebody in the future that doesn't have an email address, they now won't appear on this list unless they have that email address. So there we go. So that is a more complex example, I suppose, about chaining segments together. And our segment list is now building up quite nicely. So we've got our invite list, our VIPs, witches and bookworms, witches who are bookworms, our events for my youth theatre this year, my parents and guardians, and my participants. Okay. Just to quickly recap on what we've learned about chaining segments. As soon as my mouse starts working. Connection fields are key. Here they allow us to use one segment as criteria in another segment. When we choose a connection field in our custom field section of the criteria, we then start to see the in segment and not in segment options in the criteria, and that allows us then to choose those segments as values. And this allows us to create segments using different data types, such as people who participated in events. Okay, so just a quick recap there. And now let's talk about how we use segments. So we're going to look at things like exporting, bulk actions that we can do with segments. We've got statistics that we can look at with segments. We've got badges as well. So this is kind of the exciting stuff, I guess. Okay, so the first thing you've mentioned there is exporting data. Yeah, essentially you would click export on any of these segments, and what that's going to do, it's going to generate a spreadsheet If this is people, it's going to give you a spreadsheet of people. It's going to have a column for each of the different attributes for the person, and it's going to fill all of that data in for you for whoever is on the segment. It would open in a new window, so I won't show you that in action, but essentially you can export the data from any segment by clicking the export button, and that will give you a list of people to invite to your next event, or it might be that it gives you information that you're going to then use in reports, or whatever it might be. But if any time you want to export data, you can absolutely do that. And I'm just going to make a note to myself in our final section when we're looking at record forms. There's a little trick there about using export and import. So I'll just make a note and hopefully I'll remember to tell you about that. Okay, so yes, that's how we can export data. So what else can we do with these lists? Well, one thing we can do is we can view the lists of people. So if we want to look at our participants, there they all are. We can see a list of them. We can see how many people there are. So if we just need that number, we can also do some bulk actions around people as well. So we could, for example, delete all these people if we wanted to. We can add or remove tags to these people as well. So maybe we want to, and this will give us a list, this option here gives a list of all of our tag fields for people in this case. We only have one in our little demo system here, which is the person type one that we've been using. Maybe we want to add a tag to all of these people and we want to tag them all as participants, for example. So I can just put that word in there. I can do a comma separated list here as well if I wanted to tag them with two different tags, but I'm just going to use participants there and I'll click save. And that now has tagged everybody here as participants, as you can see.
Tom, we've just had a really good question actually from Patty again. Permanently delete, is that just for the segment or for the actual CRM? So are you just deleting everyone? Yeah, you know what.
Yeah, really good question. So yes, the segment is always based on criteria. So deleting is not going to affect who is on a segment. It will delete these people from the CRM altogether or add them to the recycle bin. You are going to get a warning when you click on that button saying, this is irreversible. Are you sure you want to do this? You're going to lose data. But yes, be aware that this is for deleting data. It's really useful if you have just imported a load of people and then you realize you've made some mistake, you've matched people to the wrong section. You can come in, you can create a segment that says, find me people that were created in the last 5 minutes. Permanently delete those people. I'm going to re-upload that data, but obviously be really careful when you are using that permanent delete button. It is irreversible, and yes, it will warn you, but do be aware of that. Great question. Okay, in the same way that we can add tags, we can also remove them. So if I want to also remove that participants tag now, maybe I've decided that was a mistake. I can go ahead and type that into the remove box, person type, and I can remove that from everybody too.
So I'm sorry, is that a live thing? So as long as this segment exists in the system, and new people are potentially adding to it, will the tags to add or tags to remove also be
really good question, Steph. So what you're saying is, if we add somebody, if somebody else matches this criteria in the future, will they then get that participant tag? No, these bulk actions are just happening for the data in the segment at the moment. However, I am going to talk in a moment about badges, which do get automatically applied to people who belong to a segment. So that kind of fulfills that.
But if you wanted to have the tagging element to it, would you just have to make sure that you regularly go in and update your segment? Essentially, if it was a segment that you're going to use long term, you're not just using it on a, you know, in one instance for one list or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So badges would be the correct way to do it automatically, but if you want to do it from time to time instead, then absolutely you can use tags We can also, it's worth saying, add these people as participants to an event. So I can choose any of these sessions here that are in my events. Any other events would be listed there, and you can add people there as well. I will quickly show you that you can also do that from the event itself. So let's come to our youth theatre group again. Let's go into, in fact, let's go into one of our older ones where I've not imported the data yet. So within this, we're in the project now. So this project is representing the whole year of 2021. Within that, we have 3 events, session 1, session 2, and session 3. I can actually add a group of participants to all of these events in one go. So I'm going to, from my group, go to the bulk add and remove participants. And I could look these people up individually. So I could just search for them one by one. But I can also choose to add them from a segment. So this is going to give me a list of any segments to do with people. And so maybe I know that the people that were participants in 2022 also participated in 2021. So I'm going to choose those people. I could choose multiple lists here if I wanted as well, multiple segments. You have the option to tag people here as well. So maybe I want to add a participant tag here. And I can choose the date range that I want to add to these events. So if I want to do all events in 2021, I can cast a nice wide net and go to December the 31st. There we go. So that's going to capture all events back to January in 2021. And it's going to add these participants to those events. I can also bulk remove individuals and segments from all of the events within this project as well. Let's go ahead and process that. And there we can see it's added 33 participant additions. So that's 11 people to each of our sessions here. And we can click through and see that those people have been added. So yeah, so when it comes to events, you can do it from the segment, or you can do it from the project or the event itself as well. The benefit of the project is that you can add it to all events. You can add these people to all events in an entire project, or just limit which dates you want to apply that to. Maybe you only want to add them to future projects or events. Okay. So coming back to our segments tool, what else can we do? What else can we do? Let's go back to our participants list again. Next tab along after our results is our statistics tab. Maybe this should be called aggregated data or something like that. There is statistical information in here, but it's not all statistical. And what this does is, I'm going to look at the bottom of this first. It's looking at characteristics that we've got stored about these people. So we've got gender, age, ethnicity, and date of birth. And what it's going to do is it's going to break down based on the options that we've set for these fields, these custom fields, and it's going to say what percentage of our participants that are on this list fit which of those sections, and it's going to give you the numbers behind the percentages as well. So we can see that most people in our group are under 16 or 16 to 24. Then we've got maybe one outlier, which might be me in that larger age bracket there. And we've got ethnicity information, and then we've got date of birth, latest, earliest, latest, and average in there as well. Okay. The other thing we get, and this is only because this is our chained segments. This is the segment that is using both looking at participants that have attended particular events. We get some useful additional information at the top. So there are 11 people, as we can see on our results list here. And when we look at our statistics, we see results 11. But also, this is across 3 events. So we found 3 events as part of our connection field as our chaining with our events segment. So what we're also getting here is occurrence data. So how many times did those 11 people attend those 3 events? Well, there were 31 occurrences of that data. And then we get that, so we can think of that occurrences as engagements, but this will work not just for events, it will work for wherever you've got this connectivity, these chained segments. But because it is events, we've also got a breakdown of attendance, so we can see out of those 31 people, 28 times they attended, 2 were absent, and 1 was unknown. And the 1 unknown is because I've added myself to that event and I haven't taken the register for myself. The other thing
Richard's just asked if those blue ones that you're hovering over now, are they links? Will they display the names behind those statistics?
Next words out of my mouth.
Oh, sorry.
Just on point, absolutely right. So literally the next thing I was going to say was these are a link. There's also a tab at the top here, but it's the same thing. If you click through on any of these links, yes, you get the data behind the numbers. And we can sort this by people if we wish, or by events. And we also, because it's event data, we get that attendance information as well. And there's me with my unknown attendance, and everyone else has either been attended or absent. And we get attendance registers as well, or records, I should say. Again, just for events attendance, we see this extra information at the bottom. So we can see that I've got a 0% attendance record. Most of the people have got a 100% attendance record. The only reason, by the way, we get attendance record known versus attendance record all is that if we haven't got an absent mark, in the all we are assumed to be absent, whereas the attendance record known only goes off where there's been a definitive this person is attended or absent. So most of the time they will be the same figure if the registers have been kept up to date. But sometimes there's a variance. Again, you're going to get this level of data whenever you are using a change segment, whenever you've got a connection in play, but only if it's around events will you see the attendance data. Okay, so
Tom, just to clarify, Patty's asked about the participants and the information we know about them. So the information it's showing here, would that have been from a monitoring form when they signed up to the youth theatre group, or are there different ways that this information could have gone into the system?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the answer is yes, there are lots of different ways that you might have collected this information. One thing to say is that this information is sat on these people's profiles. So we're only going to see data fields or custom fields that are relevant to the type of data we're looking at. So we're looking at people in this case. And so we can therefore deduce that gender, age, and ethnicity are custom fields on people. If we were filling in a monitoring form, then that would likely sit in our records section. And so that would be separate. And I am going to look in a moment at getting data out of records. But yes, we can assume that this data sits on the person's record.
What about when your segment is not a people type?
Yeah, so it would be the same. So if we look at our events now, there's probably not much crunchable data on events, but if we look at our list of events that we created, if we look at the statistics there, then we're just going to see, yeah, there were 3 results. Had we had some, drop-down options or something with numerical data or something like that in our events, we'd see that there. So you're going to see whatever pertains to the data type for that segment.
But could you have monitoring information attached to an event or a project that is separate from people? Would that be via record?
That would be via records, yeah, which we'll have a look at in a moment.
Okay.
So yeah,
just another question, sorry, Tom. Could those people have signed up to the project only but not be saved in the CRM as people?
People can only be connected as participants to an event if those people exist in the CRM. You can, in your events, create a custom field called number of people attended and put a numerical figure in and not drill down into the details of exactly who those people were. But obviously, you're not going to get a gender, ethnicity, age breakdown of the number unless you then create separate fields to record those things, which you could as well. But yeah. By default, participants for a group would be listed. They would be people in the system.
Great.
Okay, excellent questions. Right, a few other things to look at. So we've got badges. Badges are only available in Pro. And they're really cool. Basically, it's like Steph was saying before, or the question that she was asking before about whether we can almost automate people being tagged just by their membership of a particular segment. And the answer to that is badges are dynamic. So let's look at let's give all of these some badges or some of them. So let's look at our VIP list here. So I'm going to click on the empty badge for our VIP list. And here I can design my badge. So I can give this a background color. I can give this a foreground color. So I'm going to maybe make a garish yellow color there, and the label color for my badge. I can search for an icon. So maybe I'm going to use a star for our VIP list here. He says the search is a little bit interesting. There we go. And we'll call this VIPs. Okay, so we're now creating a badge for this segment. Let's go ahead and save that. And when we click back on our segments now, we'll see that a badge has been created. So what is a badge? Well, this is about showing visually somebody or a person or an organization's membership of a segment. So if we click on this list of VIPs now, and we click onto Harry Potter's profile, for example, we'll see he has got his VIP badge there. And that's because it's not a tag where we've had to add it manually to Harry's profile. It's because he belongs to that segment. So as new people start matching the criteria, we add a new session, we add some new participants to that session. For example, if we were looking at the participants list, people would start to get those badges. Or in this case, if we add the VIP tag onto somebody, they're going to get the VIP badge there. So let's just explore that a little bit more. Let's go ahead and give our participants here a badge. Okay, so this is the youth theatre. So I'm going to use a skull. I'm going to use that classic kind of Hamlet reference there. Let's make that a white skull on a blue badge with a white skull. We'll call this youth theatre participant. Perfect. Okay, so again, if we now look at anybody on our participant list here, let's look at Ron. Ron's now got his youth theatre participant badge. And again, these are dynamic. So if we go ahead and add somebody new to our youth theatre program, let's put Arthur on here because I know he isn't already on. Okay, so Arthur has now been added as a participant to our session. That should mean that if we go to our segment and look at our participants list, we should see Arthur showing up on here. Here he is. And then if we click onto Arthur's profile, we don't have to click on it through the segment, by the way. If we just search for him, he now gets that badge automatically. So that's what badges are all about. It's just about bringing visibility based on criteria. So they're dynamic based on segments. Okay. Right, we're almost finished. I'm going to just go through one last thing about segments now. Any more questions at this point, Steph?
No.
Okay, so let's just do a quick recap on using segments. So we can export data to spreadsheets from our segments. We can perform bulk actions such as tagging, adding people to events as participants, that kind of thing. We can view the statistics or aggregated data based on a group of people or events or whatever that data might be. And we can create those badges for that dynamic visibility. And badges are supported both for people and organizations, so it will show up on their profiles. Okay, so to finish off with, I just want to talk about using record forms in segments, responses that we might have to surveys or whatever it might be. And really the key thing here is that we can use segments to view statistics, let's say, or to export responses from across multiple record forms if we want to. So let's just have a quick look at that to finish off. Okay, so first of all, let's have a look at our record forms. What we've got here in our record forms, we've got two surveys. We've got Survey 2021 and we've got Survey 2022. And it so happens that the surveys are the same. If I click add response, we've just got some very simple questions. We're going to ask somebody for their name. We're asking them how happy they are about their role, and we've got a scale of options there for them to choose from, and how they rate our service, and we've got a range of options to choose from there as well. We also have some responses filled in, so Hermione, Harry, and Ron have filled in responses both for 2021 and also for 2022. So some basic survey data. Now, if you've used record forms before, you'll probably know that we can view statistics directly within our record forms. So if we're looking in this case at the 2022 survey, we can see how many results we've had, how many responses, and how people's happiness level was rated, how people's service rating was rated as well. But we can do more with segments. So I want to show you creating a segment for record form responses. So I'm going to add a new segment. We're very familiar with this by now. I'm going to call this Survey Responses 2021 and 2022. Now, this is the thing that can sometimes trip people up. What type of data are we looking for? They're called record forms and they store records. So we're going to look for records on our list here. Okay. And we're going to add some criteria as usual. And when it comes to record forms, one of the options that we get right at the bottom is we get the name of the record form that we're interested in. So that will make more sense when I expand it out. So searching for records where record form has any of, and then I get a list of all my record forms. And so I'm going to choose Survey 2021 and Survey 2022. And there they are. So now when I look at my results, I've got 3 results in each survey. And as we can see, we're actually getting all 6 of those for 2021 and for 2022. And that means that we can export those data. So if you ever wondered, how do I export responses from a record form? This is how you do it. But also we can look at the stats across those 2 periods as well. Okay, now, 2 things that I wanted to remember to mention. Sorry, I realized we were at time, but very quickly. One thing is I didn't answer one of the questions we had earlier, which is what are system segments? Basically, system segments are just things we've hidden away so that you don't accidentally change them. And they're usually used for some kind of workflow or something that we've built for you. So generally you can ignore them. If you want to create a system segment, you can just click on the padlock icon at any point. That will move a segment into system segments. Again, it doesn't really do anything. It stops it being deleted. People can still edit the segment, but it hides it away so it's less likely to get changed by accident. And then the final thing I want to say is, because we can export data from record forms can be shared. We could set up a record form that asks for people's name, email addresses, and other personal data, have those filled in. We can then export that data, and we can import those results from our record forms in as people into the system. So it is possible to create people from record form responses. So just going back to your question earlier, Steph, about where maybe gender, age, ethnicity came from, well, actually, we could ask for that in a survey record form that's shared publicly, filled in, then imported as people. So I just wanted to cover that as well. And just to quickly recap there, we can use segments to view data in record forms. That allows us to export the data from record forms, and we can look at multiple record forms using those segments as well. Okay, now we've kind of had our question and answers along the way. We are at time. With that, that's all, folks. Thank you again ever so much for coming along.